Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Jenna Schaefer, licensed psychotherapist here. I help people navigate and heal from toxic and harmful relationships. In today's video, I want to chat with you all about how to spot an emotionally immature partner. To start this video off, I want to give just a brief definition of what we mean when we say that someone is emotionally immature. An emotionally immature person is a person that has low emotional intelligence, meaning that they struggle to understand both their own emotions and the emotional needs of other people. The language of emotion tends to be quite foreign to these folks, which can lead to a lot of complications in relationships. And as I'm sure a lot of you are aware, emotional language is required for healthy relationships. And that's why having a relationship with someone who's emotionally immature can be quite daunting and even toxic or abusive. Now, this is on a range, a continuum. There's different levels of severity when we talk about emotional immaturity. Narcissism as a form of emotional immaturity is probably one of the most extreme forms of emotional immaturity. However, not all emotionally immature people are narcissistic. A lot of these traits I'm going to discuss do apply to narcissists, but narcissists kind of have their own pillars of traits that we just notice with people that are narcissists. In particular, a sense of entitlement, feelings of grandiosity, the need for external validation, and a lack of empathy. In this video today, I'm just going to talk to you kind of about what we see with all different types of emotional immaturity, so you can kind of get a feel of what this can look like in people that struggle with this. The first thing that's really common amongst emotionally immature people is that they say and do different things, meaning their words don't tend to line up with their actions. An extreme example of what this can look like is someone that tells you how wonderful and amazing you are, and then turns around and cheats on you with somebody else. Or that they care about your needs and feelings, yet fail on a consistent basis to really meet those needs for you and give you a reassurance for how they're feeling in the relationship. What they're saying and what they're doing are often incongruent with one another. A second big hallmark of all emotional immaturity is that they are very self-centered and selfish, meaning that they're constantly looking for other people to meet their needs, but they struggle to meet or even understand the needs of other people. Again, they might say that they do care about your needs, but yet when it comes to actually meeting the needs that you tell them that you have, they're not very consistent, or they don't do this at all. But yet they constantly demand that you take care of them and meet their needs. They really give this vibe that they really only care about themselves and their own well-being in the relationship. And an example of this could be commitment phobia. Someone that struggles or is afraid to commit maybe to a romantic relationship, even though you have a need to be in a monogamous committed relationship. They might act like they acknowledge that need, but yet they don't do anything to really make the relationship official. The third sign is the inability to take responsibility when things go wrong. Narcissistic and sociopathic people in particular really struggle with this part. Taking responsibility for things that go wrong require the ability to be accountable and take ownership when things go wrong. And narcissists and sociopaths really struggle with that. Or in terms of sociopath, they don't really care if it's their fault or not. Regardless of how it looks, they're not going to show up and take responsibility or accountability for potential problems or issues in the relationship strain, or things that you're drawing to their attention that they might benefit from working on. A lot of them will shift blame and make it feel like it's your problem or your fault in some way. They also don't take responsibility for the way that they can make you feel in the relationship. If you try to communicate how they're making you feel, what their actions are making you feel like, they'll usually deny any responsibility and be like, that's your problem and you need to work on sorting that out, without their ability to see how they're contributing to those feelings. Again, feelings language is very, very foreign to emotionally immature people. So telling them how you feel about something, it tends to really, really go over the head of these types of folks. A fifth sign is they have difficulty expressing their own feelings and emotions. If you ask them how they feel about something, they might stumble around and not really understand what that means. In some cases, they may just deny having emotions altogether. I'm just not an emotional person. I don't feel emotions. While this isn't quite true, typically that's the result of quite a few defense mechanisms that work there to kind of numb them out from feeling emotions. But they have a hard time doing the emotional work to get to the point where they can really fully feel and acknowledge and understand their own emotions. The flip side of this is that they have a hard time, again, understanding your emotions as well, which leads into my sixth sign, which is a lack of empathy. This is something that's definitely characteristic of narcissism, sociopathy, psychopathy, also can be seen in more, not as extreme versions of emotional immaturity, because a lack of empathy really is just the inability to really understand how another person feels in a situation or how you're making another person feel. Emotionally immature people can be quite egocentric, kind of again aligning with that selfishness, where they can really only see things from their perspective and their own point of view. So that makes it particularly difficult for them to be empathetic and see things from a different perspective or a different point of view. A second sign, which should be no surprise considering the things that we've discussed up until this point, they tend to be very poor communicators. They are not clear or direct in their communication a lot of the time. A lot of the time, they'll engage in avoidance of certain topics, or they'll divert the topic that you're trying to communicate to them or issue that you're trying to draw to their attention. They can stonewall, meaning that they just fail to acknowledge you completely. They can get defensive, so they can lash out or act out and they feel like you're accusing them of something. They can shut down, freeze in place, not being able to really articulate anything. It can look like a lot of different things, but the thing that this has in common is that in some way, shape, or form, communication is really, really difficult for emotionally immature people. You can often feel like you have more success communicating with a goldfish than you do with someone who is emotionally immature. The goldfish is likely to probably get it a little bit faster. An A sign of an emotionally immature person is that they can struggle with emotional reactivity and impulsiveness, meaning that they act before they really think about how this is going to come across, what this is going to say about them, or really fully conceptualize the situation. The eighth sign of an emotionally immature person is that many of them tend to be quite impulsive or emotionally reactive, meaning that they often act before thinking about how they're coming across or even taking the situation, the full context of the situation into consideration to really engage and kind of realize what's happening. Conceptualizing a full situation, seeing different points of view and different perspectives is definitely something that people with high emotional intelligence do almost intuitively. People who are emotionally immature really struggle with that. A lot of times it's kind of a knee-jerk reaction, right? It's almost like you stick your hand in like a koi pond and the fish just turns around and swims away from you without really thinking about what's going on, right? And that's because emotionally immature people tend to be really strongly emotion-minded people, meaning that they act on their emotions without considering rationality or logic. Emotions take over and their reason tends to go out the window pretty quickly. Impulsivity, they don't think about the consequences of their actions when they're engaging in doing something impulsive. This is why a lot of emotionally immature people cheat on their significant others. They don't think about the consequences of what that's going to be like. And then you combine that with lack of empathy, they don't realize how they're going to make their partner feel all of the time. Or they might go and make a large purchase on a credit card without really thinking about how they're going to pay off that debt. It can look like a lot of things. Those are just a few ways that it can look. Ninth side of emotional immaturity, and this is something that you can notice in yourself, is that you feel lonely in the relationship. This can even happen if you're living with the person, right? They're not connecting with you. They're not engaging with you in an emotional way. You're going to feel lonely. Your connection needs, which we all have, most of us have, go unmet. Those connection emotional needs aren't met on an ongoing basis. You're going to feel lonely as a result. And the 10th and last final sign that I'm going to talk about today is that they struggle with criticism. If you draw their attention to any of the things that I've talked to up until this point, again, they tend to deny or maybe even flip the blame over to you. This can look like gaslighting. It can look like blame shifting. Basically, you're made to feel like you're causing all these problems. They don't have the self-awareness or the ability to reflect on how they're contributing to the way that you're feeling. In some forms of emotional immaturity, in particular, narcissism, especially covert narcissists, they react very, very poorly to any even perceived form of criticism. Nobody necessarily likes criticism, but these people tend to react to it on a whole new level. Emotionally immature folks can be really difficult to have healthy relationships with. In fact, I don't really know if it's possible to have a healthy relationship with someone who is emotionally immature unless they're doing the work to actively work on it, which unfortunately isn't very common. A lot of times, how they're contributing, because they lack things like empathy, they lack self-awareness, it really is hard for these folks to change. Now, some of them can. Some of the lower level types of emotionally immature people can change, usually with some pretty intensive psychotherapy. Ones that are on the continuum, kind of on the extreme end, really, really subtle change. Narcissists in particular are very, very highly resistant to change. They lack the emotional resources to even consider how they could possibly be a problem or a villain in anyone's story. If your partner is exhibiting maybe just some of these signs, talking to them about maybe trying something like couples therapy or seeing if they've considered going to, their own individual therapy to work on these things, there can be room for improvement. People can work to heal some of the wounds that kind of cause, this emotional immaturity is typically the result of a pretty traumatic upbringing. Some people that are emotionally immature do have empathy. They just don't have the ability to really access it, meaning that they don't realize how they're coming across and hurting other people, again, because of like low self-awareness. So if this was brought to their attention, sometimes they're able to identify those things and make changes and kind of build that empathy muscle up. Thanks for watching this video. I hope it was helpful for you. Again, if you're new here, hit the subscribe button. I release videos every week. I'd love to see you in future videos. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. That really helps spread the message to other people that can benefit from this content in this video. And I hope everyone has a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next one.